welcome to Sci-Fi Night. I'm your host, Sebastian Metal Martinez, and this is the show where we take a look at some of the lesser-known sci-fi and horror movies out there and try to find the right expectations needed to get the most out of them. So, in tonight's episode, we're taking a look at another viewer request. Yep, it comes with courtesy of my personal buddy, Will Wodzistiak in London, Sci-Fi Night subscriber Vincent Flink, and also YouTube producer The Only Russian Around, who's got some pretty interesting stuff, by the way. You can check his stuff out by clicking the annotation, which should be somewhere around here after I'm finished editing. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to this film that takes place out at sea and is about killer Russian cyborgs. Virus is a sci-fi action horror from 1999 directed by Jack Bruno, whose directorial work you're probably not at all familiar with, mainly because this is his only full-length feature film that he's ever directed. The movie stars Donald Sutherland, Cliff Curtis, William Baldwin, no, not the famous one, and the Scream Queen herself, Jamie Lee Curtis, who of course you should know from Halloween. Now, an interesting fact is that Jamie Lee Curtis has actually gone out in interviews blasting this film. Yeah, she hates it. And while this is definitely not as good as Halloween, I really think she's kind of over-exaggerating a bit. The movie starts off with the biggest scare of the entire film. The title! We then see some kind of strange electrical storm in space badly damaging the Russian Mir station, and sending some kind of electrical signal back to the ship that it was in contact with. We're then introduced to our cast who don't really seem to be all that into it. For example, Donald Sutherland is either way too uninterested in this, or is had a few drinks too many.
Put her back into the wind, Woods.
You're in the middle of a storm and you sound like you're telling him to change the channel. I mean, come on, Sutherland is clearly drunk in this shot. The ship is damaged from the storm because, well, Donald Sutherland was drunk and they end up losing their cargo. They then encounter the seemingly deserted Russian military ship from before and decide to board it. They then discover that they're not alone on the ship as they come into contact with some biomechanical entities that also inhabit the ship. And they're pretty unique, but they're also just kind of a Russian Borg. As things start to heat up, they try to both discover what happened to the ship and stay alive. After discovering a survivor, they find out that something has taken control of the ship, which is now building a biomechanical defense mechanism for the remaining humans.
I took control of computers, scanned all information, language, encyclopedias, medical data. He was learning. Learning what? How to kill us.
There are actually some pretty interesting ideas thrown into this film. In the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to something called intelligent lightning, which is what takes control of a ship, using both human limbs and mechanical parts to build soldiers, kind of like white blood cells. So in some ways it's kind of like Star Trek First Contact, but with these Russian machines instead of Borg and with a drunk Donald Sutherland instead of Patrick Stewart. The special effects for this film are hardly the best you'll ever see, but they hold up pretty good, and the creativity is pretty cool.
This thing smells like dog shit. What is it?
It's robotic, high-tech robotics.
So the action and gore is actually pretty decent, and the characters, while albeit being kind of two-dimensional, are perfectly serviceable as well. The location, being on a large scientific vessel in the middle of the ocean, gives the film an appropriate claustrophobic feeling, which definitely works, as well as a pretty unique identity. There aren't really a whole lot of surprises in this film, aside from some cool practical effects that are a lot better than you'd think. The special effects team are the real stars here. Speaking of stars, the actors all do fine jobs. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, Cliff Curtis, and Donald Sutherland are all more than capable, at least when they're not drunk. William Baldwin is as forgettable as any lesser Baldwin brother who isn't named Alec, but you could definitely do worse than this in terms of cast.
Could someone please come and take a look at the nails in my shoulder?
Oh, Woods, stop whining.
The action is fine, but the effects do a lot to make everything a lot cooler and more exciting. Some of the robotic creatures are pretty damn cool looking and surprisingly gory when they actually act out some violence. So, what should you expect from this movie? Cool special effects, In my opinion, the effects are the shining star of this film. There was definitely a touch of creativity involved in the making of these biomechanical constructs, which kind of act like white blood cells defending the core. The monsters of this film will most likely be a highlight for you. Decent cast. While this cast is on paper pretty good, the execution is mostly just okay. Donald Sutherland wasn't really on. Cliff Curtis, while I always enjoy, isn't in the film as much as I'd want.
Touch it again, I'll cut your hands off.
I can respect that.
And he's not really as memorable as he was in Training Day, Sunshine, or even Deep Rising.
I'm always getting love from the homies.
Baldwin is surprisingly the one actor who really tries the hardest.
Take a look. That barge goes down. We go down with it.
I guess it's maybe because he's trying to fill some big shoes and stand out amongst the rest of the cast, but it's pretty surprisingly cool. At least Jamie Lee Curtis knows how to hold a leading role. Even if she's perhaps not giving it her all, it still holds up way better than what pretty much everyone else is doing. Overall, the cast is perfectly serviceable, even if the script and direction didn't make it as strong as it could be. Sci-fi action cliches. At the end of the day, this isn't really anything you haven't seen before. The plot points are more or less the same as in genre movies like Deep Rising and Leviathan. Still though, this film has something most others don't. Russian cyborgs. Overall, you shouldn't expect to be blown away by the story, as you can see some pretty clear influences from, for example, the X-Files, Aliens, and other more well-established franchises. So, you've probably actually kind of seen this film before, but just in different packaging. Still though, you've probably seen it done worse as well. The term popcorn flick gets thrown around a lot in a negative way, but as for this film, I'd say it's applicable in a good way. The film is a lot of fun, the plot is very easy to follow, and you can easily enjoy this with a fistful of popcorn in one hand, a beer in the other, and some friends around you. Don't expect anything new or original, but you can at least expect to see some cool monsters, some decent deaths, and really, isn't that all you need sometimes? So, that about does it for this episode of Sci-Fi Night. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please click the like and subscribe button to help out the show. If you didn't enjoy it, please click the like and subscribe button to help out the show. And if you were indifferent about it, please click the like and subscribe button to help out the show. Also, you can let us know in the comments what you thought of this review of the movie Virus, and what kind of films you want to see brought up here in the future. So, with that out of the way, as always, I'm your host, Sebastian Mel Martinez, and we'll catch you guys next time.
You just said them before you said it. Who's them? Machines.